How a wide receiver releases off the football is the difference between getting open and being covered. In this video, we're going to show you exactly how wide receivers get open and the different releases they will use throughout the game. Now, the first release is what we call a speed release, and that's essentially just trying to get as fast as we want to go as fast as possible. So, for instance, an outside speed release or an inside speed release if we're trying to win now based on coverage. We're actually going to pull up the whiteboard here to show you exactly what we mean. So speed releases are important, especially if you're trying to run concepts to get other players open. So for instance, if we look at this X receiver here, he needs to get a mandatory outside speed release. So if I have this corner pressed up against me and the defense is playing cover three, the worst thing I want to do is get an inside release on this if we're trying to run a flood concept, because then the cornerback can vision the quarterback and break on the football. We want to make sure his back is to us. So if I want to run a flood concept here, I want to get a mandatory outside speed release, okay? This will take the corner out of the play, and then that way I can run my 8-yard out and then my short 3-yard out underneath it, and I can start to layer the defense. But all of this is predicated on the release of the X receiver. And to make sure, most coaches will call it MOR, mandatory outside release. You got to get an outside release and you got to make sure it's a speed release. So when you think speed releases, think that we're trying to get to the outside or the inside as fast as possible. There's no hesitation steps. It's just go and then get into our route. Next, we're going to talk about the split release. Split release is all we're trying to do against a physical corner is just split our feet. That way we can make a hesitation move. I thought this was a great clip here from Antonio Brown. Split, you notice his feet split. There's going to be a head fake, and then he's just trying to win with speed. But if you notice, the defensive back is on his heels now because he guesses the wrong way. So when we're trying to split, we're trying to hesitate our head one way to try to get him on his heels and then trying to work around him. So a good hesitation fake, like you're seeing here, will get him leaning one way, and then we can work vertical back the other way. And of course, Antonio Brown wins this rep just on pure speed, but all of it was set up based off his split here, where he's just splitting his feet, coming to balance, and then that way he can move left or right to get where he needs to get to. And here's another variation of the split release. Again, just trying to split our feet, head fake, then we're gonna try to chop the hands if we possibly can. But you notice we naturally gain leverage by doing this because it keeps the defensive back leaning one way. You see a great hesitation move here. But again, it was all set up by the initial weight transfer and making sure that defensive back's off balance by the split release that the wide receiver does to get into his route now. Next, we're going to look at what's called a diamond release. And the diamond release just means we're trying to get at a 45-degree angle while keeping our hips upfield. That way we can make a break left or right. So I thought this was a great clip here from George Kittle. If you notice, he splits his feet. He starts to get vertical at a 45, but you notice his hips never break going vertical. So now he can put his right foot in the ground, shuck the corner by, and then get to the inside and get that separation. But again, it all comes back to his hips. He's not turning his hips towards the sideline trying to run around him like you would in a speed release. He's trying to keep those things square and then get that outside foot in the ground, hit the outside shoulder, swim back over, and then ultimately get wide open into his slant pattern. So this is called a diamond release. We'll show you one more variation of it. And here's another variation from it. You can see, again, split the feet, get up north, try to get that DB's hips open, and then we're get on the outside shoulder and then try to get back to the inside. But again, you notice the wide receiver's hips, they never break, they never differ from going upfield. And usually you're going to win within the diamond release within the first 3 to 5 steps, and then get that outside hand, use his momentum to push him away, and then getting back to the inside on that slant. Again, you can do it for outside moves, you can do it for inside moves, but a lot of times you're going to see on an inside move trying to keep our hips flat as we get back to the inside. Next, we're going to look at 1-step and 2-step hesitation steps. And this is different from the split release. When I think about a split release, I think about just splitting our feet and we're staying in place. A hesitation step is we're trying to gain ground on them and trying to put pressure on them, especially if they are shuffling out. So if I have a hard corner that's sitting there playing press on me, I want to use a split release, but if he's starting to bail out, I want to pressure him a little bit. And you can see the footwork here from this receiver. You notice he starts to gain ground, and then we're going to make a hesitation left or right as we start to climb. In this drill, they're just going back and forth here, but I thought this was a great point of notice he's gaining ground, and then he's going 1-2 or just 1 step, and then trying to get where he's got to, swimming the hands, and then getting back north. So this is what I call hesitation steps, just trying to gain ground on that corner, 1 or even 1-2, and then getting into our route as fast as we can. This next release here is what we call a shock release. I believe the coach in the video here called it a gangster release, but essentially all you're trying to do is use as much physicality as possible. This works when you have a defensive back whose weight is on their heels and they're not expecting a collision. You just straight up run, you push them right in the chest to try to push them over and then run by here. So you can see this receiver here, he's just trying to get in his chest, trying to play a little bit of bully ball and then run by him. A lot of times this won't get called as offensive pass interference as long as the ball isn't in the air. But if you get a corner who's hyper aggressive or won't move from his spot, a good way to be physical with him. That way he starts backing up a little bit more. It's just get in his chest and try to blow by him. So again, coach calls this here a gangster release. I've called it a shock release. Some call it a bully release. There's different names for it, but essentially you're just trying to use as much physicality as can to get off the football and to release downfield. If you want to learn even more football, check out the Ultimate Football Guide in the description below and watch this video next.